This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Again, Erev Shabbos. I want to welcome all of our Torah Anytime viewers. We're now streaming live on J-Root Radio. We have a very special shiur this Erev Shabbos, Erev Rosh Chodesh, and we're going to try to connect Rosh Chodesh with the Parsha, with Parshas Korach. Just want to mention, this shiur is being sponsored by Daniel Avraham and Chana Wasserman in honor of their daughter's Bas Mitzvah on Tesvav Sivan. Naomi Shifra, she should be Alei V'Hatzlach, Tikanes, L'tar L'chov Masam Tovim. Okay, so the Torah tells us in Siman Taf Yud Zayin in Arachayim, the idea that Rosh Chodesh is considered somehow the Yom Tif of the Nashim. In fact, some have a minhag not to do malacha. So where does this come from? What does that mean? Rosh Chodesh is the Yom Tif of Nashim. In what way? Why? So the Torah brings down, he quotes the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, that the women did not want to contribute their earrings to their husbands when they made the Egel, and therefore as a reward, Hashem gave them a schar that they would guard and keep and preserve Rosh Chodesh more than the men. And the Torah says, V'shamati me'achi Rabbi Yehuda. I heard from my brother, Rabbi Yehuda. The Torah was Rabbeinu Yaakov ben Rabbeinu Ashar. So Rabbeinu Yaakov's brother, Rabbeinu Yehuda, told the Torah a reason. What's the reason that Rosh Chodesh is the Yom Tov of the Nashim? Lafisha hamoyadim niskenu keneged ha'avos. The various Yom Tovim that we have during the course of the year, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, are keneged the avos. Pesach keneged Abraham, Dechsev, Lushi va'asi ugais, uPesach haya. Pesach is keneged Abraham, that when Abraham had the malachim in his house, he said to Sarah, Lushi va'asi ugais, and it was Pesach. Shavuos is keneged Yitzchak, because the Tkiyah Shofar of Kabbalas HaTorah was from the Isle of Yitzchak, and Sukkos is keneged Yaakov, because it says about Yaakov, Ulamiknehu Asa Sukkos. And what about Rosh Chodesh? The Yud Beis Rashi Chadashim, the 12 Rashi Chadashim, are also called a Mayed. They were keneged the Yud Beis Shvatim. Uchshachatu be'egel, when Klal Yisrael sinned by the Egel, Nitlu Mehem, it was taken from them, v'nitnu l'neshosayim, and it was given to their wives, l'zeicher, as a memory, shlo hayu ba'oisei, that they were not part of the sin. It's interesting, mehechi teisi, first of all, the women did not contribute to the egel. It doesn't say they didn't contribute. Who said they didn't contribute? So the Levush brings down in Siman Taf Yud Zayin that the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, Chazal say, and the Levush also quotes Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, is more mutal on the women than the men. Why? Because Hashem gave them reward that they did not contribute to the Ega. And the Levush brings a raya. Because at first it says, Vayomer aleim Aaron, Terku nizmei hazav asher ba'oznei nishechem b'neichem b'noiseichem hevi olai. Take off the rings from your wives, sons, and daughters. But b'shas ma'isa it says, Vayisparku kol ha'am. What do you mean? It says it should say ba'ozneihem uva'ozneihen. That implies mashma ozneihem shel ha'am, which are the men, that the women did not want to contribute. And therefore, since the 12 Rashi Chadashim were originally keneged the males of the Shvatim, and it was the first mitzvah that was given to us by Yetzias Mitzrayim, and when Klal Yisrael sinned by the Egel and the women did not want to contribute, Hashem took it away from the men and He gave it to the women. And by the way, the makar of this is a Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, who says pretty explicitly that when Aaron saw that Chur, the son of his sister, Miriam's son, was killed, so Aaron made the following argument. He said, if I don't tell them to give me gold and silver, what are they going to do? They might kill me, they're going to do worse. When the women heard, says the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, he said, the women did not listen, and therefore Hashem rewarded them that they guard Rosh Chodesh more than the men. Okay, and then the Pirkei Eliezer says, "The nasan lahem schar la'olam haba." God gave the women reward in the world to come. Shehin asidin lehischadesh kamay Rosh Chodeshim. The women are destined to be renewed like Rosh Chodesh. What does that mean? What does that mean? They're going to be renewed. It's very interesting. If you look in the Eliyah Rabbah, and this is an interesting point of information. In what way is a woman? What's the relevance of Rosh Chodesh to a woman? The Eliyah Rabbah writes that every month a woman renews herself. Her cycle is repeated. Her cycle is renewed. She goes to the mikvah, and she's toivel for her husband, and she desires to be beloved by her husband, like when she first married him, just like the moon. So a woman experiences a similar cycle to the moon. The renewal of the moon is analogous to the woman's renewal to her husband on a monthly basis. That every month the woman's relationship with her husband is repeats itself and is renewed, is nischadesh. In fact, the Marshal writes a very interesting thing. You know, when you married your wife, how long ago? Don't answer that question. You know? 100 years ago, 130 years ago, whatever it was, some more, some less. And you look at the pictures and you see a beautiful kala, and now, 150 years later, sometimes maybe she doesn't look the same. So Chazal say that la'asad lavai, the Marshal writes, that even an old woman will return to the beauty of her youth, la'asad lavai. Okay, that's what the Eliyah Rabbah reports in the name of the Marshal.
What about the man?
The man? Don't get your hopes up, you know? Also the Eliyah Rabbah, number 8, brings here, when we say that it was given to the women, that implies that at first Rosh Chodesh was only given to the men. It was not a unified holiday at first. It's not that it was for everyone and then only to the women. If we say that it was given to the women, that implies at first it was given to the men. Otherwise, if the women already had it, they're not getting any reward. The fact that they're being rewarded, that implies they did not have Rosh Chodesh before. Only the men had Rosh Chodesh. And now, they have it. So now that's a question we have to deal with. Why originally did the women not have Rosh Chodesh? What did they do originally that warranted that they shouldn't have Rosh Chodesh, that we're saying the reward is they're being given Rosh Chodesh? And what's the lumdus that they're getting Rosh Chodesh? By the way, the Taz writes that there's a concept that when a tzaddik fulfills a mitzvah, the tzaddik takes his chelek and the chelek of the rasha. Well, that's exactly what's happening with Rosh Chodesh. The women who were righteous with the chet ha'egal, they're taking their share, and they're taking the share of their husbands at well. In other words, this is a little bit of a different way of looking at it, because the Beis Yosef asks that if the women already had Rosh Chodesh, what kind of reward is it? They already had it. That's not called a reward. The answer the Taz wants to say is, even though they originally did have Rosh Chodesh, they're now being given the chelek of the men in Rosh Chodesh as well. So there are two ways of looking at it. One way is it was only given to the men, and then it was taken away from the men and given only to the women. Or it used to be jointly owned, and now the half that the men owned is being given over to the women. But let's try to understand the way the Eliyah Rabbah is looking at it, that the women originally did not have Rosh Chodesh at all, and then it was taken away from the men and given to the women. Okay, let me share with you something very interesting. We know that Tfilos Avos Tiknum, that the Tfilos were enacted by the Avos. So Abraham was Masakin Shachris, Shenemar Vayashkim Abraham Baboiker, and Yitzchak was Masakin Mincha, Shenemar Vayetze Yitzchak Lasuach Basada, and Yaakov was Masakin Mariv, Shenemar Vayifka Bamakoin. So who is Masakein Musaf on Rosh Chodesh? So the Chidah brings down in at least 3 places that if Rosh Chodesh is the Yom Tov of the women, and the paragon of the Isha Tzadekes is Rachel Imenu, Rachel was Masakein Musaf of Rosh Chodesh, and the remez is Rashi Chadashim La'amcha Nasata Zaman Kapara L'chol Taldoisam Rashi Chadashim La'amcha Rashi Tevois Rachel. Rachel was Masakein Tfilas Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. Says the Chidah in the Berkei Yosef. Look at number 5. Musaf Shal Rosh Chodesh Rachel Imenu Tiknasuha. Shetzav Sabruach HaKodesh. She foresaw with her Holy Spirit. She knew the men would mess up. She knew the men would sin with the Egel. And she knew the women would not. And she was Masakein Rosh Chodesh in the honor of the women pre-Chet HaEgel. Pretty amazing. Pre-Chet HaEgel. The Chidah writes in the Midbar Kedemas, look at number 6, Rachel Imenu, V'zchusa nitnu Rashi Chadashim LiYisrael. In her zechus, Rosh Chodesh was given to Klal Yisrael. V'chein Rashi Chadashim LaAmcha, Rashi Tevis Rachel, U'musav Rosh Chodesh Rachel Imenu Tiknasai. She saw Baruch HaKodesh that the women would not sin with the Egel. By the way, the Chidah brings down in the Sefer Dvash Lafi that the word kayoreach, like the moon, is b'gematria Rachel. Kayoreach, like the moon. That the women are tied to the cycle of the moon. Well, Rabbi said, let's take a look then at this week's Parsha. Since this week's Parsha is not only Parshas Korach, but it's Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, let's see what connection there is in the Parsha to Rosh Chodesh and to the Koyach of Nashim. The Pasuk says in Mishlei, Chachmois Nashim Bansa Beisa, the Iveles Biadeha Seher Senu. The wisdom of a woman builds her home, and with foolishness she tears it down with her hands. So the Pasuk is saying in Mishlei that the success of the home is dependent on the wisdom of the woman. Says Rashi, what's an example of a woman who built her home? Kamay Ishtay Shel Oin Ben Peles, like the wife of Oin Ben Peles, Kamay Shemafurash Beparak Chelak. And what is the example of the foolish woman who destroyed her home? An example would be the wife of Korach. Tahares Beisa Zu Ishtay Shel Korach. So Mar Rabbi say, what happened over here? In what way did the wife of Oin Ben Peles build her home? And in what way did Korach's wife destroy her home? Says the Gemara in Sanhedrin on Daf Kuf Tesam Beis. The Oin sheyashav ba'aninos. Oin because he became an Oinain. Peles shenasuloi plois. Wonders happened to him. Ben Ruvain, ben Shara v'heven. A son that saw and understood. Amarav Oin ben Peles ishta hitzilasai. The wife of Oin, his wife, saved him. Oin's wife saved his skin. Amrulay, she said to him, what are you getting involved in here? Either way, you're going to be a nothing, either a nothing here or a nothing there. What do you have to gain? You're going to be the executive assistant vice president. Everyone's the executive assistant vice president. It doesn't matter to you whether Moshe is in charge or Korach's in charge. You have nothing to gain. My nafkalachmina. Either way, you're not on the bottom of the rung. Amar Allah, he said to her, "My Abed, have a ba'itza. I was part of the count of Ishtabali, Bahadaw. I swore." So she said, "I know. Look, I know one thing. Every good Baal Machloikis is farfrumt, and there's no way." He said, "Amar le Yadana dekula kenishta kadishtanin." They're all holy people. Everything is for Kedisha, Vitara. Obviously, they have these lofty kavanas. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit outside and I'm going to uncover my hair. And there's no way these big tzaddikim of Bali Machloikis are going to look at my hair uncovered. Amrole, she said to him, Tov, so you stay here. Da'ana matzonach, I'll take care of you. Ashkisa chamra. She gave him to drink wine. Va'arvisa, and she inebriated him. Va'aginsa gavoi, and she put him to sleep on the inside. Oisva al bava, she sat outside the Sasra Salamazye, and she untied her hair. Called the Asa, anyone who came, Chazia saw her, Hadar retracted. In the meantime, already everybody got swallowed in the ground, right? So that's one of the benefits of covering your hair. You could always save your bad husband by uncovering. But if she kept her hair uncovered all the time, she never would have been able to do this. Okay. Called the Asa, anyone who came, so they went back. Va'adahachi ivlahu itza. Okay, ivlahu. It's the Korach, but the wife of Korach, Amrale, she said to him, Chazi my coven Moshe, you have a Malka. He's the king. La'achva Shavi Kahana Rabba, the brothers of Kohen Gadol. Livnei Achua, to the sons of his brother. Shavinu Skani de Kahana. Iyas Yatruma. If Truma comes, Amar Teva Lakayin. Yasa Maisa. Dishkusi Atun. You take it. Amar Havu Chad Miyud Lakayin. Va'oy the guys Leilam Azaychu. Umatalachu Ki Kufta. Basically, Amrale, she said to him, Kivan de Kula Rabusa Didei, Amariyu Nami Thomas Nafshi and Plishtim. Basically, she persuaded him she fueled the Machlokes, and she instigated him, and she provoked him. So Oin's wife was a smart lady. She says to Oin, you have nothing to gain, and Korach's wife fueled the fires of Machlokes. Hainu Dechsiv, Chachmais Nashim Ban Sabesa. The wisdom of a woman builds a house is the wife of Oin ben Peles, and the foolish woman destroys her house. That is the wife of Korach. Okay, interesting. So our Rosh Hashiva, Zechazai Bracha, Hagoin, Rav Chanoy Chenech Leibowitz, he pointed out that if the Gemara is invoking the pasuk Chachmas Nashim Ban Sabesa, that implies that the influence that Oin's wife wielded and the influence that Korach's wife wielded came through their capacity as a wife. In other words, if we're utilizing the pasuk, the wisdom of a woman builds her home, that's the wife of Oin. The foolishness of a woman destroys her home, that's the wife of Korach. In what capacity were they exercising their influence? As their Rav? Were they the Rav of the house? The Mashgiach of the house? The Mashbiah? No. They're exercising their capacity as wife. Uvekoicha shel ishtoi. And what do we see from here? Says the Sefer Chidushei Halev. He says, Mashma, look on the second paragraph of number 12, the second line. Shehinit tzlichu lashpia al Oin ben Peles ve'al Korach rak biglau shahayu nishoiseyem. Their influence was only because they were the wife. V'hainu sheteva ha'ish liyos mushba me'ishtoi. Human nature is a husband is influenced by their wife. If you want to know who influences you more than anyone else in this world, your Rebbe, the guy who gives Shiur in Young Israel, the rabbi in the shul, the pulpit rabbi, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, your sister, your brother. If you want to know who influences you more than anyone in this world, it's your wife. And that is, Korach's wife had the ability to destroy him, and to be mechayiv him misa, and to make him lose his olam haba. And Oin ben Peles' wife had the ability to save him. By the way, in the Sefer Chasidim, in Ois Kuf Lamed Hey, he says on the pasuk in Tehillim, Al Zois Yispalo Kol Chasid Elecha La'is Mitzay, and the Chachamim say, La'is Mitzay, daven for a good wife. Why? The Noyeg Sheba'olam Ha'ish Karach Achar Ha'isha. You should know that even though you think that you set the tone in your home, if you think you're the leader in your home, no, it doesn't work like that. The wife sets the tone. A man is tied to his wife, like it says by Achav, Asher Hisasa Oisa Izevel Ishtai. There's a story about a Chassid Echad that he married a Chasida Gemura, and he gave her a get, and then he married an Ishara. And this guy, she went and she married a Rasha Gomor. So what happened? What's the fate of the story? You have two good people, Tzaddik and Tzaddikas. The Tzaddikas married a Rasha, and the Tzaddik married a Rashanta. The Tzaddikas took the Rasha, she made him the Gadol Hadar, and the Rishanta took the Gold of Hadar and made him Weiter and Oisvarf. That's the end of the story. Okay? Zois holcha v'nistas l'rasha gomor hachasid azav midas v'nevach v'atzas ishtayra v'harashav shavim rishasay v'nasa chasid gomor. Therefore, make sure you get a good wife. In fact, then he says something very interesting. Kol Yirei Hashem. When it comes to a Dvar Mitzvah, okay, I'll let you read that on your own. This is not for general consumption. Fine. Weiter. In number 14, the Sefer Chidushei Halev points out that what we see from the Sefer Hasidim is that human nature is for a person to be influenced in a very deep way from one's spouse. And a woman could take a woman has the capacity to take a Oisvarf and make him a good guy. And also the other way around. The other way around as well, that a bad woman could take a good guy and bring him down. And therefore, so what is it? What is this? Could a husband influence his wife? Everything's possible. All the rules have their exceptions. But in general, it seems like it works the other way around. So first of all, we see from here a few things. It's important to make sure to marry a good woman. But once it's done already, a person should be aware that the primary influence in their life is their spouse. And therefore, if a person was zoicha to marry a good wife, and a wife who brings them in the right direction, then go with the flow. Let it happen. It's a good thing. On the other way around, if a person is in a situation where they are headed in a better direction, then a person has to be very much on guard and be aware of the possible pitfall. It's interesting, on this note, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky points out in Parsha Shlach. So you have the Meraglim, you have the 10 Meraglim veered off. And then you have the 2 Meraglim, the 2 spies who stayed on the good path, Yoshua and Kalev. And the Torah tells us that Yehoshua's name originally was Hoshea, and Moshe Rabbeinu changed it to Yoshua. He davened Ka Yoshiacha Me'atzas Meraglim. So Rabbi Yaakov asks, what's going on over here? Why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu daven for Kalev? Why did he only daven for Yehoshua ben Nun? So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says a very beautiful answer. He says, why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu daven for Kalev? Why would he have to daven for Kalev? Who's Kalev's wife? Miriam. Miriam. He's not in danger. There's no chance that Kalev is going to do something wrong. If he would do something wrong, boy, would his wife give it to him. So Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have to daven for Kalev. Kalev was married to Miriam. Kalev was married to Miriam. He's safe. Yoshua ben Nun maybe did not have the same type of protection, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu had to daven for him. I always thought to answer a little differently, because the truth is Kalev had a different wife besides Miriam. Now I'm not sure when he married her, but the Gemara Megillah says, "Ve'ela b'nei Bisya." These are the children of Bisya, Asher Lakach Mered, who Mered married. And the Gemara asks, who's Mered? Mered is Kalev. And Kalev rebelled against Meraglim, and therefore he married Bisya, who rebelled against her father, Parai. So, if I don't know when Kalev married Basya, but if the reason why that zivug was made because they both were able to go against the flow, maybe the reason why Kalev was able to go against the flow of the Meraglim is when you have a wife like Basya who was able to stem the tide and go against her father's gezerah, that gave him the strength to go against the tide of the Meraglim, and again Moshe Rabbeinu did not have to daven for Kalev. Okay, so I want to point out something very interesting here. Rosh Chodesh, we just mentioned, is the Yom Tif of the women, because the women did not sin at the Egel. We also mentioned that originally Rosh Chodesh was the Yom Tif only of the men. And then it was taken from them and given to the women. Why was it only the Yom Tif of the men? Marv Rabbi said there's a mitzvah every month of Kiddush HaChodesh, Kiddush Levanah. Is it a mitzvah saseh shezman grama? Presumably yes. Rav Shlomo Kluger writes no, but presumably it is. Do women say Kiddush Levanah? Never saw a woman say Kiddush Levanah, and the Magen Avraham says even though women are Mekayim mitzvah saseh shezman grama like Sukkah, they're not Mekayim Kiddush Levanah. Why? Because it's their fault. They ruined the Levanah. When did they ruin Levanah? When Chava took the Eitz Hadas and she ate it, and she said, guess what's for supper tonight? A little Eitz Hadas. And then the moon shrunk. So she messed up the Levanah, and therefore she can't do Kiddush Levanah. You got it, that's what he says. Magen Avraham said. Now, where does it come from? The Shla. The Shla HaKadosh, right? Look at number 18 in the Shar HaOis Kuf. U'minag Yafa, a beautiful minag. We're noig in Yushalayim. We say after the bracha, Mizmar of Hallelujah. The Nachen Hu Ma'oid. L'hisayrer or Halevana Shomal, we want to arouse the light of the moon above. He Malchus Beis David. She'aleha Roimzim David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam. And then we say Tana Dvei Rabbi Shmuel Ilu Lo Zachu Dayam Amar Abaye Hilkach Tzarach L'Meimra Mu'ubad. Then Kaddish Rabbanan. It's a very beautiful thing because La'aseh Lavai, the Pagam Halevana will go away, and the sun, the moon will be like the sun. And then Yiskadei Shmei Rabbah, and God's name will be whole, and the throne will be whole. Very nice. Asher nira be'einai shemitam zem misrachim anoshim mitzvah. That's why women don't do Kiddush Levanah. Either mekayim any mitzvah saseh shezman grama, like shofar and lulav. But I never saw, maybe I saw a woman take a lulav and I never saw a woman do Kiddush Levanah. They daven shachars mincha marav, says the Shla. So why don't they do Kiddush Levanah? Because they ruin the Levanah. How? Chet of Chava, and therefore they're embarrassed from the moon. That's what you thought. What? We're going to come to that. They fixed it with the Egel. And they didn't listen to the Nachash. In other words, who persuaded Klal Yisrael to make the Egel? The Satan, the Nachash. And the second time around, the women didn't listen. So, okay, fine. So we give them Rosh Chodesh, that they guard it more than the men. But still, since they're the original Siba that the Nachash came to the world, and then the men, in other words, the women brought the Nachash, and because of the Nachash came the Chedo Egel, so women don't do Kiddush Levanah. It's a very interesting thing the Shla is saying, that women ruin the moon. Lamaisa, that would explain why Rosh Chodesh was originally only given to the men and not to the women. Why? Because originally they were the ones who were paigim b'Levanah, so therefore that's why Rosh Chodesh was only given to the men. The same reason they don't do Kiddush Levanah, originally Rosh Chodesh was not given to them. But then when the men stumbled by the Egel, it was taken away from the men, given to the women, but the women still don't do Kiddush Levanah. There is a major problem over here. It's very hard to blame somebody for something that they didn't do. Yeah, it says on the fourth day when God created Esham Vayomer Elokim Yehi Ma'oros B'Kiyah Shemayim, right? Esham Ma'or Hagadol Mishal Zayim Esham Ma'or HaKatan. So the moon was already made small before Chava was ever conceived and born and came to this world. It's very hard to blame her for the Pegimas HaLevana when the Levanah was Nifgam before. This is a question that the Aruch HaShulchan sort of alludes to. Aruch HaShulchan in Siman Tav Chavav, he says, you say anyone who's Mevarach the Chodesh Bizmano is like Mekabel Pnei Hashchina, and we're up to number 19, and Ilu Loizon Nezo Gavel Pnei Avim Shlosham Pamas Vaz Dayam, says the Aruch HaShulchan Mavur, the Kiddush HaLevanah Hu Inyan God of Anoira. Ubevada yesh b'zeh soidois gedolos v'neirois. Kasher arichu chachmei hakabbalah she'inyan miyad hayareach ve'inyan ched adam rishon noigim zalazeh. Somehow the original sin is connected to the Pegimas Halevana. But the question is how? He doesn't say. Ula asilavai, that the sin of Adam Harishon will be fixed, then the moon will be fulfilled. So where does this come from? Who said that because of the sin of the Eitz Hadas, the moon was made small? So in the Shas Tshuvas Rav Pa'alim of the Ben Ish Chai, he in Chelak Dalet, Siman Lamed Dalet, he wants to know, where does it come from that the women were the ones who were Paigim Levanah? He says the answer is, the Makar is in the Shla, that the women were Gorim, the Pagam Levanah. It came from Chava, and therefore the women do not do Kiddush Levanah. By the way, that's the reason why, Al Kein Amr Chazal, why do women have the mitzvos of Nida, Chala, and Hadlakas Haner? Also because of the sin of Chava. Chava put down, what? She was Kava Ma'ira Shalaylam, and therefore she has to light the Neos. By the way, the Shla says, just like the Levanah, the Pagam is only full after 7 days, a woman is only mutter to her husband after 7 days. And just like the moon cycle is 30 days, the cycle of the woman is 30 days. But, says the Rav Ta'alim, says the Ben Ish Chai, you should know there is no makar for this idea in the Kisvei Arizal. It is not mentioned anywhere. This is the Kiddush of the Shla. There's a tshuva from the Kloisenberger Rebbe in Shas Tshuva's Divrei Yatziv. You know, the Kiddush Levanah comes every month, but there's a mitzvah that comes even less frequently, and that is Birchas Hachama, once every 28 years. Do women do Birchas Hachama? Do women do Birchas Hachama? I don't mean today. I mean every 28 years. Do women do Birchas Hachama? So says the Kloisenberger, the Chacham Tzvi says, of course they don't. Of course they're not allowed to. Shanashim lo yivarchu Birchas Hachama. Why? Because it says in the Sefer Noye Katzon Yosef Chasav Adoni Mari V'chami, that the reason why women are not Mekadesh the Chodesh is because they cause the moon to be Poigim. Lefizah Kiddush Hachama, that women, that the minhag is to make at the beginning of the cycle, they should make. One second. And the Chacham Tzvi was moideh that they should. So the question is, so what does the Chacham Tzvi hold? They should, they shouldn't. So it says the Kloisenberger Rebbe, the Shla writes that women don't do Kiddush Levanah because they're a Paigim Levanah. So it's like this. The Chacham Tzvi was moideh that according to the Shla, that those who are noig to make a bracha on mitzvah saseh shazman grama should not do Kiddush Levanah. Why? According to that, so here's the question. The question is the Chacham Tzvi, we have conflicting reports about the Chacham Tzvi. First he said, of course they don't. Then he said, of course they do. The answer is like this. If the reason why they wouldn't is like the Magen Avram says, that women do mitzvah saseh shazman grama. Elamai Kiddush Levanah not, because they're Paigim Levanah, they weren't Paigim in the Chama, and then why in the world should they not do Kiddush HaChama? But it happens to be the Chacham Tzvi's shita is that women don't make a bracha mitzvah saseh shazman grama. The Memela, the Chacham Tzvi was moideh that if, according to the Shla's reason not to make Kiddush Levanah, they would do Kiddush HaChama. Chacham Tzvi just happens to hold women don't make a bracha on Sukkah, on Lulav, or any mitzvah saseh shazman grama. And that's why the Chacham Tzvi wrote that they would not make a bracha on Birchas Hachama. However,
are they forbidden from making a bracha?
So that's a very big machlokes. It's a machlokes between Ashkenazim and Sfardim. Ashkenazim basically hold women do make a bracha on mitzvah saseh shazman grama, but for a Sfardi, they're not allowed to make a bracha on mitzvah saseh shazman grama. It's asur for them, which includes Baruch Sha'amar and Yishtabach. That includes a Sfardi woman. Check with your local paisik. Rav Adi Yosef said that if you're a Sephardi and you want to send to Ashkenazi school, that's your problem. But what's a bigger problem is, no, you want to send to Ashkenazi school, they have good learning, it's true. But you cannot allow them to say Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach and maybe even Berachas Krishma. Check with your local Sephardic Paisek. The halacha, it's a bracha l'vatala. They're not allowed to say it. Ashkenazim do say it. Sephardim are not allowed to say it. Okay. And according to that, if you hear a Sephardi woman say it, you can't even answer Amen. They're not allowed to say the bracha. Fine. But the Kloisenberger Rebbe concludes that our women are noyeg like the Chacham Tzvi, and like the Sanzarav, that there is a Kabbalistic reason for women not to say a bracha mitzvah saseh shazman grama. So apparently, at least those who follow Sanz also do not make a bracha on mitzvah saseh shazman grama. But then he's bothered by the following question: that what in the world does the Shla mean that women were goyim the Pekam Halevana? The Levanah was made small even before Chava ever was born. He says, "Be'emes mashakasav hashla shechava garma Pekam Halevana ein lazem muvan shar Levanah nismata oid lefnei shenoitz rechava." You know what the answer is? Hadvarim amukin utamurin. It's deep and hidden. And umavarma al derech hanistar. It's the secrets of Kabbalah. Ve'inli esek b'nistarais. And I don't busy myself with the secrets of Torah. In other words, v'hamei v'nya. If you understand, you understand. And if you don't, you don't. It's, one of those things. Amnam b'pashtos, you could say al pipshat, we find a pasuk that the light of the moon will be like the sun, and the sun will be 7 times more. So what do you see from there? The sun was also diminished. So the sun was diminished, then possibly women should not make Berachas Hachama either, says the Kloisenberger Rebbe. Okay. There's a Sefer Shalsher Tshuvas Kinyan Torah, who also tries to explain this idea. What does it mean women were poigim bin Levanah? They weren't even born yet. So let's see if we could figure out what he means over here. Look at number 22. He saw in the Sefer Tosfos Shabbos that the Ramah says women should not be mavdil. Why shouldn't women make Havdalah? By the way, when we say women shouldn't make Havdalah, that just means if there are men around, they shouldn't make Havdalah. If a woman, if her husband's not around or she's by herself, a woman must make Havdalah and she should drink it herself. It's just a preference. But halachically, she should make Havdalah. But what's the reason women refrain or avoid it? Because for the same reason, the women don't make a bracha on the Levanah because they're regarding the Pekam Levanah. And women don't drink from Havdalah because also the Eitz Hadas was a gefen. And through the Chet, it caused Dam Nida to come to the world to be mavdil her to Adam. So it could be that's what the Magen Avram means when the Magen Avram references Soif Siman Reish Tzadi Vav. When the Magen Avram in Hilchos Havdalah, the reason why he references Kiddush HaChodesh.
Is it okay for a woman to drink from Kiddush?
Yeah, women should drink from Kiddush, but not from Havdalah. So by the way, he writes over here, Agav, he wants to point out, he saw that there were those who were bothered. The Pegam Halevana was on Wednesday. That's when the Ma'iris were born, right? That's what you mentioned before. And the Chet of the Eitz Hadas was not until Friday. He says, Loi kasha midi. It's not shvar. Why not? Because it's taloi zabazah. The Abdurav writes, Rashi says that Hashem told the world, Eitz peri oisa peri, that the fruit trees should taste like fruit. And they didn't listen. They made Eitz oisa peri. So the trees did not listen to Hashem. Okay. Why did they? So now the question is, why didn't they listen? They don't have a Yetzer Hara. Why didn't they listen? So they did an Avera Lishma. Why? What kind of Avera Lishma? Since Adam was destined to sin, and he was created from the Adama, so they wanted to give Adam an excuse. For Adam to say, you know why I sinned? You created me from the earth, and the earth already has in it the seeds of rebelliousness. This is, it means, v'zacharti esprisi Yaakov, v'ha'aretz eskar. Yeah, now it's pshat. We see Yaakov, we see Yosef, we see Abraham Eskar, v'ha'aretz Eskar, says the after Rav. Hashem remembers He created us on the earth, and the earth, the material that we were created from, has a streak of rebelliousness to it. So too, now what does that mean? What does the sin of the Ma'ores got to do with Chava? It means like this: Bereshis, all Ma'isa Bereshis, above and below, was all created on the first day from the Koyach Hiyuli, meaning somehow he doesn't explain, but somehow the sin of the Ma'ores was to be able to give Chava an excuse to be able to sin. Unclear exactly what he means. But moreover, Rabbi Sai, I want to bring out two ideas. So let's think about the development of Rosh Chodesh. According to many, it was originally only given to the men. Why not the women? So we sort of conjectured the women were the ones who were Paigim Levanah, so therefore they were not given Rosh Chodesh. So it was only given to the men. And then when the men sinned by the Egel and the women did not, Rosh Chodesh was taken away from the men and given to the women. So it's very interesting how the timeline and the if you analyze the history of Rosh Chodesh, how at first the women were the furthest from Rosh Chodesh, and now they're the most observant of Rosh Chodesh. Why is that? How is it that in the origins of Rosh Chodesh, women were at first the most distant, they don't even do Kiddush Levanah, and now Rosh Chodesh is the Yom Tov of the women. So remember, a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva darshaned Es Hashem Elokecha Tira, the rabbis, Talmidei Chachamim. And we asked, why Dafka Rabbi Akiva? Nobody else understood the greatness and the value of Talmidei Chachamim. And Rabbi Yosef Engel pointed out that because when Rabbi Akiva was in Am HaOretz, he said, Mi yiten li Talmid Chacham anashchenu kechamor. Rabbi Akiva was nichshal in appreciating Talmidei Chachamim. So we brought an idea for the Baal Shem Tov, that when Hashem wants a person to do tshuva, the process of tshuva is, in order for the person to have such charata, Hashem gives somebody who is nichshal in something an extra degree of havana in that inyan, so that they could appreciate how much they were nichshal to have the proper charata for what they did wrong. And because Rabbi Akiva was nichshal in chashivas for Talmidei Chachamim, Hashem gave Rabbi Akiva a matana of havana and understanding of the greatness of Talmidei Chachamim, so that he could darshan as Hashem Elokecha Tira l'Rabbi Talmidei Chachamim, and then feel the tremendous charata for having been mevaza Talmidei Chachamim beforehand. So maybe that's what happened over here by Rosh Chodesh as well. This Yisod is the Yisod of the Baal Shem Tov of Kel Nekamais Hashem, Kel Nekamais Hoifiyah, that God, Rebbeinu Shalom, gives a person revelation of Yedias HaTorah for a person to be able to do tshuva. So at first the women were nichshal in the chashivas of the Levanah. They were paigim b'Levanah in the chet of Adam Arishain. Memela, for them to be masaking that, the Rebbeinu Shalom perhaps gave the women a Havana Yisera in the importance of being Mamale the Levanah, and therefore comes the Chet HaEgel. They were the ones who were able to overcome the Chet HaEgel as a tikkun for the Chet of the Eitz Hadas. The same way, Rebbeinu Shalom gave Rabbi Akiva a Havana in the Gadlus of Talmidei Chacham to be masaking his Hachshala in Chashivas for Talmidei Chachamim. The women who at first were Nichshal now were able to be Mizgaber through this concept of Kel Nekamais Hashem, Kel Nekamais Hoifiyah. Or if you remember, the way we explained it was that when somebody stumbles in something, it is incumbent upon them to try to rectify that and work on that inyan more. Memela, the women who were Nichshal in the Pekimas Halevana, they were always focused on trying to be Mamale the Levanah, so comes the Chet HaEgel, they were able to overcome more than the men. Be it as it may, Rabbi Sai, who's responsible for Korach being in the ground? Korach's wife. Who's responsible that Oin ben Peles was saved? His wife. Chachmas noshim ban sabesav iveles biyadeh taharsena. Memela, says the Gemara in Bava Basra, if you want to go on a good tour, go into the Arabian desert and put your ear to the ground in a certain spot, and you'll hear Korach declaring Moshe v'sayrasai emes v'hin dadoin. And the Gemara says, how often does Korach resurface? Says the Gemara, when? Listen to what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Kol tlasin yomi, every 30 days. Which day? On the 13th of the month, the 17th. Says Rashbam, every Rosh Chodesh. Why Rosh Chodesh? Because Korach abused the koyach of Nashim. Korach was succumbed to the foolish woman. Rosh Chodesh is the day that is a day of Yom Tiv for the Nashim of Klal Yisrael. The tefillah of Rosh Chodesh was enacted by Rachel Imenu, Roshei Chadashim La'amcha. Perhaps that is the reason why Korach has his tikkun every Rosh Chodesh. Every Rosh Chodesh, Korach surfaces and he declares, Moshe emes, b'sayrasei emes. This is the koyach of Rosh Chodesh and the connection to Parshas Korach. Rabbi say Agin Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.